have no idea. But like, are you more or less committed to the end, whatever the outcome is?
Oh, I don't think that I mean, I think that there's a really good chance that um it's basically like an Elon calling card, and you're never going to see it really be. It's going to go down with the market, but I don't think that it's going to ever. That's why it's a fascism play, bro. It's never going to die. Because the if if he goes bankrupt, we're going to bail him out. That's there's no other way to put it. Like we would bail Elon Musk out. So, um,
Would you? I mean, would the we don't know what the next administration is, right?
100% they would bail him out. He's the number one recipient of Department of Defense
Mm-hmm.
funds. So like he would absolutely be bailed out. Yeah. So it's I mean it's disgusting. I don't think that it's fair. I don't think that it's good. I would dismantle his company, and I don't think that it's a good thing. I think he's taking advantage of it. He's not paying any taxes and absolutely be bailed out. Yeah. They're saying your stuff isn't coming. Can you guys do a test real quick, Corey?
Yeah, testing.
Test, test.
Yeah, you're not coming through for some reason. Let's see. Thank you, Geo. Thank you. Whoa, they updated. Oh my gosh, they just updated the mixer. That's why. Okay, we add you here. Chrome. Dude, you should be here. I don't know why I'm not seeing you. Speaker application. Oh, it's not even seeing Chrome. That's really weird. How can I? Sorry, 1 second. I don't know what's happening. Dude, the freaking TikTok app, like when they do updates, like everything gets all messed up.
Sounds about right.
It's not seeing your. It's not seeing the Chrome app. Maybe I can just go into Firefox real quick. Okay, 1 second. Sorry, this is sorry. Frustrating. Okay, 1 second.
You excited for House of the Dragon? I think it's like in a week.
Oh, I didn't know. I had no idea.
Yeah. Okay. I guess you're not excited because you're not.
I am now. I didn't know it was. I try not to keep track of that stuff, honestly,
Really? Oh, okay.
because I don't
Interesting.
want. Well, no, just because I don't want to like anticipate. Like I don't want to be
You don't
like
want to be hopeful or anything, or like, you know.
it's not hopeful. It's more like I don't want to have to be thinking about, oh my god, I can't wait to this coming. I'd rather like, oh, it's here, like, and then I'll watch it. Like, oh, that's fantastic. Like, it'll be a nice surprise. Like, oh, okay, well, I was planning on doing something else, but now that this thing is out, I know exactly what I'll be doing. Without like the months or weeks, of like,
Or years.
anticipation. Yeah, or years. Um, yeah, so like I'm not all that tuned into TV these days, honestly. Not that like I don't watch television, like I just don't like the news and stuff. Like I'm tuned into video game news, so I know when those things are coming out, and like a lot about the business there. But for like TV, like I've been surprised multiple times. There was another show that it's a few shows I think they came out. Like I didn't know that the new season was here or anything. But then I'm like, oh, fantastic! This is what's happening now.
So then I have to assume that you didn't watch any of the trailers for the upcoming season because that's the
I
release
wouldn't
date.
want to watch the trailers any which way.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
fair
I
enough.
don't. Yeah, I'll just watch it. But it sounds like you're excited.
Yeah, I don't mind. Well, I sort of expect for series like this, it's going to be years of anticipation no matter what, right? From season to season, or at least like a year. But yes, I am
Yeah,
excited, and I have watched the
yeah,
trailers.
yeah. I mean, it was I well, I mean, last season was a little. I mean, it was.
There's a lot of build up, but that's where it's like the
Yeah,
build up to this season, the real the real
hopefully,
stuff.
I hope it delivers. It was unfortunate what happened last season, the budget and all that. But I'm not like I didn't like it. I watched the whole thing and now I enjoyed it, but just like clearly some like rewrites and um the like budgetary decisions, like majorly affected the direction. But yeah, we'll see. I hope it's I mean, I hope it's everything that we could want. Like the actual payoff, hopefully to scale.
I mean,
Um,
based off of the trailers, not to give anything away, but obviously, the trailers is always trying to get you enticed to watch the show. But at least the message that they're pushing is like, oh, what they were leading you on to believe to happen in season two is now actually happening in season three.
okay, that's fantastic. Yeah. Um, interesting. Yeah, I'm excited.
But I guess then
I
you're not like the person, since you're not like keeping track of when it's being released, that you're not planning a rewatch of season one and two, and then when season three starts, picking up right there.
I mean, I've rewatched seasons in the past for something like this. Like, oh, when I find out something is coming out, sometimes I'll. I mean, it's very rare that I'll do that. But I'm not planning on doing it for this one. But it's something I have done in the past. I think I rewatched Severance.
Hmm.
No, was it Severance? It was some show like that. I forget which one of those shows. And but I was happy to do so. Yeah, happens every so often, but I probably won't do it for House of Dragon. But it sounds like you will.
I plan to if I can fit into my schedule. That's a good 20 hours of TV watching like
Mm-hmm.
to fit in. And like yeah, like I guess then you're not keeping track of when Severance is returning.
Um, I have no idea. I mean, I want to. I mean, I want it to be soon, but I know it's going to be a while, so I will let it be a while.
Yeah, that's unfortunate with TV these days, where it's like
I mean, they started working on it immediately. My understanding was. Well, no, actually, no, maybe not. I forget. I thought they. I mean, it got renewed immediately. So there's that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there we go, guys. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. All right. We're back.
All right, I'll go
welcome back.
live then.
All right. All right, guys. Well, first up we have man, this is a scathing article. Kennedy shows minimal engagement with vast health portfolio. Corey, you linked this in the New York Times, and it
I
really
did.
shows just how I can't it's remarkable to me just how unserious the Trump administration is and everyone in it. How they have no, you know, they're not engaged with this at all, of being in these positions. They don't want to actually do the work. They actually don't want to be educated. He's not just taking the presidential daily brief, and Trump just watches TV all the time. But that's just Trump, right? That's just his thing. And surely he could still manifest people around him that are competent, and that, at least because he's a businessman, and that's what they all say. But then you have something that's RFK. He has presumably been fighting his entire life in order to fight these corporations, in order to push this agenda, to hold these pharmaceutical companies accountable. That's what he says. And then now he's in this position to have, I mean, he's never going to be president of the United States, right? I mean, can we just let's all admit that, right?
I mean, I hope not, but I don't
There's no
put
way.
anything past the American public at this point.
Oh yeah.
You wouldn't think a reality.
Which one are we talking about? RFK?
Kennedy shows minimal engagement with the vast health portfolio.
I don't think Kennedy even wants to go to be president. I don't think he's ever shown any interest. I mean, sorry, he has shown interest because he ran. But I mean, that guy. I mean, it was clearly to raise his profile. Right? People do that to raise their profile. But anyway, well, I guess I would agree with your thesis that he's not going to be president.
And I learned a lot during this article. It's really interesting. He's not engaged with this at all. He's not actually doing the work. That was obvious. But man, some of the stats were remarkable. 340 million Americans, but 40% of the population gets their health care through Medicare and Medicaid. I had no idea that it was that much. 40%. I thought that was I was really stunned by that.
Through both of them combined, that sounds about right. I mean, there's the elderly, right, who are going to be in Medicare, pretty much universally, except for maybe the ultra wealthy, and then there's a large amount of people who fall below the threshold, who will take advantage of Medicaid. 40% seems pretty right. There's a lot of old people, and there's unfortunately a lot of people who are struggling.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's I guess I never thought about it in that
Yeah,
term.
I mean, if you don't ever think about it, I hear you. If you don't.
But he's not held any serious meetings about the Ebola conflict. He hasn't actually done. He's not engaged with this at all. He's made no public statements. He has just completely been disengaged about this. And when asked, he just basically said, "I'm not. We're talking about it." What? That's it.
I mean, just this entire administration is all, from my estimation, all memes. Nothing serious. I mean, it's all aesthetics. I mean, we see it it's an administration largely ran through whatever posting on social media, and even just posting on the White House webpage, right? It's all largely about messaging, not actually doing anything, right? I mean, I now have lost track of is there an Iran deal currently, or is that off the table? It seems to change by the hour, or we're winning, or rather, the U.S. is winning the war in Iran, but then not. And then even now, whatever, you just see Secretary Hegseth just posting on Twitter his exercises. I don't know what he actually does aside from that, but maybe he's actually doing something. But all that to say is yes, everything outlined in the article about RFK is sadly not surprising. Where it seems he clocks in. I think it was they say he clocks in at 10:30. And then clocks out at 4 p.m. And that he has his specific meetings, but he's largely inaccessible. And even then, he seems to have his own sort of assistant that everything has to be ran through that person. I can't remember the person's name, but I think they were largely in charge of his campaign when he was running for president.
Exactly.
And it seems that person is sort of maybe not a puppet master, but they're the gatekeeper to him.
And they can't get things done. They couldn't. There was specific reports and specific ideas that they wanted to push through, and because everything is Susan Wiles. Thank you, Helen. Yeah, she's like they're not doing things efficiently. Like they're trying to take hold of this, but they're not doing it efficiently, and it's because critics quote critics say one of the most urgent problems is Kennedy's failure to act swiftly to address the leadership vacuum. There is no Surgeon General.
Surgeon General, yeah.
Around half of the 27 institutes and centers at the NIH are run by acting directors. The acting chief of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease was recently fired. The leader of the FDA quit last month under overpressure over the tobacco policy. Kennedy fired the CDC director, and it's now run by an acting basis of Jade Bhattacharya, who is already the director of the NIH. And this happened with Trump 1 too a lot. It was just, they don't have a theory of the case that government should work, and they feel like the swamp are these public officials. So why are they, in their minds, maybe they're like creating more of the problem or more of the swamp by nominating people?
Oh, I don't know exactly what the philosophy is, or rather, I think actually you more or less highlighted it in terms of, like, for them, no government is effective government, right?
Yeah.
And I think this potentially overlaps with actually, like, a topic that we spoke about on one of Prime's panels of, like, if I remember correctly, like a lot of ambassador positions are left unfulfilled, or rather, like, these positions are open, waiting to be filled, but then they're just not going filled. And so you have multiple countries that they have vacant ambassador positions, and, like, and with these health institutions, like, they're pretty much being gutted from their expertise, as in this is like institutional expertise that's going to be gone forever and not be filled for, I imagine, years or decades to come.
Yeah.
The stream today, got the link is in the group TM.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think what is the least offensive way to say this. I don't know. I don't know. It might be for the best that he's checked out. Like let's think about this. What value does, like, RFK Jr. add to this organization? I mean, like, the whole thing is, the whole reason we're doing this show is because he, he's a detriment, right? So the fact that he's just, like, not involved, I think it's good, for my political propaganda purposes, right, to push my point about how destructive and awful this government is, and, like, it's just a complete joke, and it's just not run by serious people, and so I'll talk about this, but,
I'll
like,
take it.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's like, oh, do I want him applying what he does to, like, the FDA and the CDC, like the things that he actually sort of cares about, to an extent that he people like this can care about anything. But, like, do I want him to apply it to the wider Department of Health and Human Services?
Mhm.
No, actually, I don't. Like, I don't want you involved. You're a know-nothing, right? You're completely incompetent, and you would be no one if not for your name. So I don't want him to be involved. Will I mean, that doesn't necessarily save us, though, to be fair, because, like, if I mean if the level below him are also, like, political appointees or handpicked any which way, yeah, and rather than the bureaucrats who've come up within the organization, then it doesn't really help all that much. But it depends. I don't know the structure well enough to say one way or the other. But like I'm curious, like, who is doing the work, who the decision is done by a lot of the bureaucrats. This is why actually the Trump administration is doing a lot to clear them out, right? Trump administration is making changes to federal workforce regulations to allow them to get rid of more of the individuals. Right, this is part of Project 2025, um, because like they realized in the first Trump administration that something that held them back was the the federal bureaucracy, and that like the Trump administration would say, oh, we're going to do something insane or expensive or unconstitutional or mix of both, right? And then they would nod their heads in meetings and immediately not do that thing. Um, because they're not also idiots. Um, so like part of the like one of the bigger projects of Project 2025 is to be able to clear out, right? To just like destroy. I mean, shrink the federal workforce in general, at which they've had some success in, but also just to like clear out and putting in loyalists. This will be important because later on in the next administration, right, if they are successful in doing this, and I have no reason to believe they haven't been, like those people can sabotage the Democratic administration that's coming in, right? So this is a big problem overall. I think it's a bigger problem rather than like necessarily what RFK is up to, right? So
That's fair. Although, I take
not
your
that I'm
point.
saying this is a bad topic. I am not criticizing your topic or anything. I'm just like, yeah.
No, no, no. But like, yeah, I'm curious how you. I guess you maybe shared it, but like, I understand the point in terms of like, do you want RFK doing anything? As in, it might be better for him to not be doing anything. But then it's like, in some sense, you're rooting for him to fail, right? Just like
I know.
some and like and I think that's a valid position. But I wonder how I guess you Americans feel of like rooting for a president and your institutional leaders to fail, right? Because at least I guess the
I
patriotic thing
mean,
to do is like
what is success though?
that's
Like,
true. Yeah,
I mean, like,
I mean,
yeah,
I
like, there,
I mean, I think
there,
like what success would be like Trump won, where it's like he at least has people that are staffing this as opposed to or trying to. I don't know. I mean, it just seems a lot different in the versus Trump 2, where it is like truly incompetent on purpose, burning the house down versus like QAnon conspiracy of why Trump can't be Trump and that all that. I'd much rather deal with the QAnon conspiracy world than just us completely abandoning the world and people like tens of millions of people dying.
yeah, I could see that case as well. But like, I take the point of like, what is success? As in, like, do we want them to be successful in implementing their agenda, whatever that? Well, we know what their agenda is, and they're pretty explicit about it. And so it's like, yes, I understand in that context of like rooting for failure. But then I guess it's like rooting for the success that you want, as in like, can let's say Democrats steer it or minimize the damage, but obviously we don't see that happening, right?
Yeah, I don't think that he believes the things that he says that he believes. I think that's the problem, is that they don't actually believe that vaccines harm more people than the virus, for example. Like, but they just say that stuff in order to rile the base and all that kind of stuff. And now they have all the ability in order to do all this insane stuff, all these studies that they've been looking to do, their terrain theory, anti-vaccine people have been like, oh, now we have the stuff. And there was actually, I was watching a video last night, Tom Cohen, he's a disgraced MD that basically was prescribing medications off label for people where he hadn't even read the medical file for, got his license removed in California. Now he's a health coach.
Anybody can be a health coach, I'm pretty sure. But
it's pretty nice gig. Now he sells $50 herb spice kits that like protect you from all ailments. It's amazing. So, but he was even saying they have this study, in order to show that viruses are fake and but RFK refuses to do it. He won't listen to him, you know? So like I don't know if they actually believe these things. That's part of the problem too. It's like I think that he's using these lawsuits in order to make money off of like suing the pharmaceutical companies, but I don't think that he actually believes like this stuff necessarily. You know, he would be like we were talking about before. He would be acting a lot differently if he actually thought that vaccines were poison. Like you would come in and you just
if they were actually harmful. And if,
yeah,
like,
exactly. You have to.
I believe he has explicitly made the claim, although correct me if I'm wrong, of like he has made the claim that, you know, vaccines have caused overall more harm or like have killed more people than, let's say, COVID. If you I would agree that if you genuinely believe that, you should be acting way differently. Or if anything, like you should be considered a failure based off of what you are doing or not doing, because like vaccines are still technically, even though they revised the schedule and all that stuff and put up some barriers, vaccines are largely still to some extent accessible, right?
Yeah.
But if you believe all vaccines are poison, well, you are making poison accessible now, and that should be considered a failure. So I agree that maybe he's a little bit difficult to read, but I lean towards him not truly believing the claims that he's making. But that's where it's like almost more disappointing, as in why, well, not that I know for sure, absolutely, but like why do other people believe that he's sincere? What are they seeing that they're able to view him as he's a sincere actor? Of like, he genuinely cares about the health of America, right? As in like his pushing of beef tallow or frying your food in beef tallow. That's for the genuine health of Americans. And that, you know, revising the food pyramid, which, you know, wasn't the worst thing in the world. But even then, there was not like a major overhaul.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, what I'm curious, like what the analysis or what the Maha movement is seeing, that they view him as like a sincere actor. And I asked the same question about Trump. Like, of what do people see about Trump that some people believe that he's like sent by God to like oversee America. And
yeah, I mean, they're so similar in that fact. Like they both really not engaged. Like if they feel like that this is their duty, their work in order to get done, the guy's showing up at 10 a.m. and leaving by 4 every day. And apparently he's this health conscious dude and he works out. Dude, I mean, come on, guys. Yeah, if you're serious about working out, you're hitting the 6 a.m. You're hitting that's the second shift. 4 a.m. is the first shift. Second shift is 6 a.m. Like you're not hitting 9 o'clock. You know, if I have to do it because I have kids, but you know what I mean? The 6 a.m. is where you actually get it done, because that's when you know you can get it in. And that's so it's really important. The guy.
Well, 6 a.m. he's doing the TRT and the peptides. Then he's got to go.
Yeah, exactly. It's just.
Well, he doesn't have kids, right?
I think he does. He has to. Probably grown kids. I mean,
yeah, like grown kids. Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah. It's just fake. It's just so performative. That's it. It's just so performative, man. Coming in late. He works remote for most of these meetings. He's just coming in. This is the anti-remote work administration, right? They literally banned.
Yeah, wasn't there some sort of like a mandate or executive order, or I don't know, there was some sort of like request of like remote work is bad and people should be in office working.
Yep. My friend that works, they're contracted out through the Department of Energy, and they said that after like Trump 2 happened, they changed basically and said that like they had to up that amount, and they had mandatory in office time now because of Trump 2. So it's like it's just, I don't know, man. But yeah, here RFK is just like not in a lot of the meetings. RFK is just sitting in them remote.
That's just how unfortunately it works with management. Of like, management has these requests of the employees of like, oh, this is good for the good of the employees, but then I'm the exception because, well, I'm in charge, right? But yeah, not surprising that he's not fully engaged in that. He doesn't seem to be that hard of a worker because, well, like again, if he truly cared, I would imagine it would be reflected in the work hours that he puts in, or at least
Exactly.
you would see something in his actions that shows that he cares. But I don't see that. But again, maybe I'm blind. I don't know.
And it's just all these acting directors that are coming in that have no idea what to do or have never ran anything like this before, that have no experience in this type of thing, and they're being shoved into these positions and they don't know what to do. There's examples in here where it's just like they're being shoved into these things, and like they're doing things that are completely outside of the norm, right? On how the United States government would normally respond to these things, right? The rule book has been burned to the ground, and now here they come, and they don't know what to do. It's just it's crazy.
And even
I mean,
even the revolving door of appointees or like of these positions of like director of the CDC and all that stuff.
mhm.
It's like that. That does not reflect poorly on the. No one seems to care. Well, aside from maybe us, and well, I guess us that are political and others that are politically aligned with us. But again, the Maha movement and there appears to be no political or optical cost to this.
Yeah. I mean, like I guess it's like an interesting question, like how I do think that there is like a government efficiency argument that Democrats should make, and anyone that's trying to improve, material conditions, and how can we use our tax money more efficiently? What can we do in order to, like the cutting waste and fraud, like that, those are all just like blanket statements that everyone can agree to, right? And I'm curious though, like as these institutions now like come in, I mean, is there just like Prime, do you think that there is more of a capability now for people to just completely redo these institutions? Like, are we trying to get back what we had? Do you think like what do we even know what a good HHS would look like?
Um. Uh. I. I mean, as a leftist, I always want to go further. I think that. Um. I mean, there are some level of some of these agencies that yes, I would like to get back. But like, I think that from the left perspective, which is different from the liberal perspective by like a lot, but from the left perspective, I think we need to make an argument for like taxes, not necessarily like increasing taxes on like the least of us, no, but like obviously progressive taxes, taxability, we already have that. But
Trillionaires, you got
like
to add one in.
indeed, indeed. Um, but like we need to make a forward proactive statement for like what these taxes are used for, like, and like what why do we do this government spending? So often like Democrats are ashamed of like these programs, and they don't make a proactive case. Of course people are going to be willing to get rid of them. They have no idea what they do. um,
Yeah.
it's interesting that the idea of government efficiency. Well, Elon, that idiot, Department of Government Efficiency, right? Like that thing, like it wasn't a new department that was created. It was a transformed previous department, which like the computer government, like digital services something,
Yeah.
um, and that was an interesting department in of itself. And I don't think many people understand this story. That department came out of, if I'm remembering the story correctly, hopefully I'm not giving any misinformation. Um, but like, if from what I remember, that department came out of the Obama care situation, specifically the website. I forget what that the Affordable Care Act website. There was a name for it, but it's escaping me now.
Yeah, but
Um,
I remember, and it's referred to in the article, that sort of a debacle of like, if I remember correctly, there was a huge challenge of getting the website up and running, and there were huge technical challenges
it
with that
was
website.
it was a complete and utter mess. Literally, like there was a moment where they brought like President Obama to show him like the website. You know, when they're going to launch um, the the insurance products, right? Um, from the Republican plan that Obama promoted. But anyway, yeah, when they were going to launch this website, like everyone around him, like they were holding their breaths because they knew it was poorly put together. They knew that this thing was like being held together by hopes and dreams, and it didn't collapse in front of him. But like as soon as the public got a hold of it, right, it was a complete mess. It was a huge embarrassment, and so they created this department. It's like, okay, well, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again, right? There was like a lot of miscommunication. There was a lot of inefficiencies in how the departments were working together, and a lot of like you know, like government inertia using old technologies and stuff like that. Like there's a whole list of failures. So they created this department to better like tackle and improve the government's technology stack. And they were doing great job. They were creating great things, including this free tax filing service that the government had that like became operational under Biden, and like had rave reviews. Like, you know, imagine not having to go to TurboTax, right, or to go to HR Block every year for your taxes. Just like using the government website, that's free. It has a lot of information any which way. And just like move through the process. People are saying that was fantastic. That office created that. Now that office is gone. That thing was destroyed, right? And also the tax thing. Trump got rid of that at the behest of TurboTax and all of them, right? So next time you have to pay TurboTax. Remember, they are the ones who stopped you from having a free alternative because it destroyed their business model. They donated to Donald Trump for that. So in any case, like, the point is that like you bring up the idea of government efficiency. I'll stop here. You bring up the idea of government efficiency, but and people have been trained to think that means spend less money, make smaller, right? Rather than, hey, why don't we like use it smarter, right? Like there's a certain level of government that we need to have to allow the services that that everyone relies on. When those when those services go away or they degrade, people complain then, right? But before we get to that point, why not have like using this tax money in a way that delivers better on these results? And it takes like actions like this. It was a fantastic effort, right, to upgrade the government's technology stack overall, and to help coordinate these things between these disparate departments that like otherwise it would have taken decades to make a decision, you know. But that's what I talk about when I'm talking about government efficiency. That's not what other people are talking about. Done.
No, exactly right, dude. I agree.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because like, and you brought up this point many times before, Prime, and I think it's a great point in terms of like when government is actually working well and efficient, you know, people don't notice, right? And even now when government is, you know, even not working as efficiently as it could be, like they don't appreciate or understand the entire infrastructure that's currently in place. And it's only really when things go wrong, of like, you know, that website for Obamacare. It's only at really true points of failure that gets highlighted. But then overlooking the vast infrastructure and everything else that is working with the government. But that's where it's like, I think, yeah, the example that you brought up of like a website where people can do their taxes, or if taxes were automatically done for people.
That's another thing. Other countries do that. Yep, and that's great.
Yeah. But that's where it's like, you know, what's better? Is it better that the government creates like a website or some sort of infrastructure that people interface with, and they interface with it and they make it, let's say, more or less seamless, but the person has to actually do something, and they see that it works. And in my mind, that might send the message that, oh, government is working and doing something, as opposed to like if it gets done automatically, like people aren't going to notice, right? Or they're going to take it for granted, right? It like even though that might be the more efficient approach, but it doesn't. I would say it may not necessarily send the message that government is working efficiently if it's done automatically, right? It doesn't catch the attention of the general public, if you understand my
Exactly.
point.
Yeah,
As in, like,
and bring. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, as in, like, the website approach. Not saying that it has to, you replicate other people doing like their full taxes, but at least something that people interface with, that they can see that it works and it works well, as opposed to just like whatever some automatic thing.
I'm not sure how to solve this problem. I'll end quickly, Greg, so you can jump in. But like, I'm not exactly sure the best way to solve this problem. Like, like what we could do, we could like try, increasing civic education, and let people know. Like, and you just try to one, just like tell them the information, but also I think it's important for them to see it. So like, I can imagine maybe schools doing like more trips, like involving like people seeing their government in action, right? Like taking kids and stuff there, and then it could be an effort in college. But the problem is that like as soon as Republicans get into office, there's going to be an effort to dismantle all that, right?
Well,
Like
that's brainwashing, what you're pretty much proposing, according to them.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, but that would be the effort. Like they don't want you to know like how government works, like in what ways it's helpful, because like the point is to dismantle that. They want you to think that it does absolutely nothing for you, right? The moment you learn the truth, right, then you're going to really resent when Republicans are trying to take it away from you. I mean, they've had like I mean, we'll just say for decades, right, within this current, not, it's not even the current incarnation of the Republican Party, from the Reagan Republican Party. Sorry, let me just shortcut this. From Reagan forward, right? Like if we just like focus on that period of time, like there's been like this narrative that the government's out to get you, and it can't do anything right. Repeated by mostly people who have zero idea what their government does, right, at all. And then you'll have the infamous sign, like take your government hands off my Medicare. That can happen. That can happen when you literally have no idea as to how any of this works. It's a tough problem to solve. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight in the article where they were talking about what you were talking about, Prime, a daunting portfolio. So under any circumstances, the HHS is difficult to run. It has 13 operating divisions covering a vast array of issues such as child welfare, pandemic preparedness. Past secretaries from both political parties say there are three main ingredients for success: understanding the work of the divisions, strong crisis communication, and muscular coordination with state, local, and international health leaders. Kathleen Sebelius, a former Kansas governor who resigned as Obama's health secretary after the flawed rollout of the healthcare.gov website, said she met with division chiefs regularly, likening them to her cabinet. Quote, "My goal was to really be informed by scientists to make sure that the NIH was at the table, that the FDA was at the table, that our global health people were at the table," said Ms. Sebelius said in an interview, adding, quote, "I was really schooled by the people who had been there before and who knew what the hell they were doing." Mr. Kennedy, by contrast, has delegated broad authority to Stephanie Speer, a long-term advisor who has been with him since his days as an environmental lawyer and functions as his protector and defender, according to people who know him. So I think especially in these jobs, there is like an institutional knowledge, aspect of it. It is there is a broader like civics portion of it, but there really is like time on the job, understanding who talks to what, how things actually happen. And you can kind of like see this when you have someone like at work or something who like understands what to do for new people. There's just like onboarding stuff that kind of falls through the cracks. There's how things work. There's little things that people do cohesively that people don't really know or talk about, and then when that person's gone, then it all falls through. So I think like there is a technocratic way of kind of like okay, let's break it all down and like let's try to restructure this and try to understand this. But when I was working at the largest chemical supplier in the world, it was daunting to try to understand this. Like I didn't have the institutional knowledge, right? I had the scientific knowledge, but like how do I interact with all these like systems and stuff, and it was incredibly hard. I had to really lean on my coworkers to understand what was going on. But I like to have so many people with so many different departments and a vast variety of knowledge. I mean, you just I don't know how you would solve that other than I mean, honestly, like probably having like an AI assistant or something that can look at what all the tasks are and maybe looks and sees like what actually happens. Maybe that is kind of like a solution in the future for this. But as of now, these are like people that have jobs that have real purpose, and they're not being filled.
Yeah, and going back to, I guess, this aspect of, government running well versus not well, and, what people notice. And like also going back to, I think, one something I highlighted earlier in terms of, rooting for failure. But it's like, I think there's a case to be made, or, I'm curious, let's say, what your thoughts on it are of like, so, we're at this point, for a variety of reasons, but basically, there's a proportion of the population that does not trust or has lost faith in these institutions. And like as we're highlighting now, these institutions are being gutted and loss of expertise in people. But these institutions still have people there, more or less trying to mitigate the damage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've spoken about it before, and there's articles written about this. Like, yes, despite all the changes at these institutions, there are people that are saying that I'm going to stick around because it's like, if not me, then who else? And if I'm not here, there's more damage going to be done. But, I think there might be a case of like, maybe more damage should be done so that people see that these institutions work, right? As in like, maybe you should have twice the amount of measles cases, then people will pay attention, right? As in like,
I mean,
should it be damage mitigation at this point? Or like, do you send the message that these institutions work by, having measles, a much more extreme measles outbreak, right?
I mean, I guess it's tough, man. I mean, because we're talking about like not just like the measles prevention. We're talking about the way that things are being screened. That we're talking
Yeah.
about
I'm just using the
so
measles
many
as, like,
things,
let's
and
say,
it's just like
I agree.
there's so much harm. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's a good question. Like, should the HHS director even have this much sway over this much stuff? Like, I think that is like if they're going to be truly more technocratic and kind of be more autonomous. I mean, I think that makes more sense than having this overriding dictatorial authoritarian control where this guy can come in and just take it all out. I mean, it also comes into this weird part where you hear it a lot on people talking about the revolving door of politics too, right? Like we were talking about the FDA and there's a drug regulator right here. She was fired last May for her post at the FDA's top drug regulator, and like the reality is, man, that like as you go up in expertise, there's just less and less people. So
Yeah, no. Someone who is high up in a pharmaceutical company has the expertise to make the transition to some position in government. Unfortunately,
it just is
at the FDA.
And we're talking about institutional knowledge. We're talking about like expertise. Like there's just less and less people as you go up the pyramid that have that knowledge. Like if you're talking about this, I talk about this all the time with the conspiracy people because it's like the top coronavirus labs in the world are just the top coronavirus labs in the world. So they are linked together. A lot of them are linked together because they're sharing data, they're sharing, what they're talking about. So like, is that a conspiracy? Like, no, they're coordinating. They're doing that. And we see it a lot with like the revolving door of politics. And that's honestly like my my hot take is probably that the revolving door of politics probably isn't as important as people think that it is. And it's probably better to have more like technocratic solutions at these agencies where they're open, they're transparent, and these people are doing good work that can be seen by others, and the due diligence reports and stuff can be seen. I think that is more important than like the same people kind of in those positions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm I largely agree with your point, especially when it comes to this aspect of the revolving door. But like, I also do understand the other side in terms of like optically it looks bad, and they understandably maybe don't fully understand of like what's going on there. Of like this person who was at this position at a pharmaceutical company, they probably have some very niche expertise, and it just happens to translate over into the FDA. Now, am I saying that that is the case in every single situation where that happens? No, definitely not. I'm sure it happens where someone like through whatever connections, or it's like it's not driven by expertise. But all that to say, I'm hoping, and I largely lean towards it is driven by expertise. But I'm curious, for example, Greg, like going back to my earlier point of like should it be just damage mitigation? Like, if you are working at one of these institutions, and like these, and in its current state, you know, uh, I'm asking you to speculate, but like, what do you think your approach would be? As in, would you stick around, or would you have the mentality of like, well, I need to stick around because for damage mitigation purposes, of I see that expertise is being lost. I'm going to be one of the few experts, good experts, that stays to mitigate the damage, or would you abandon ship? I can understand both sides.
My it would be the same stance that I have right now, is that I'm not trapped in here with you, you're trapped in here with me. So whatever I had access to, a radical transparency, I would be talking to the media, I would be like disclosing whatever I could to whoever I could, being as public as I could, talking about this stuff to the point where they would have to fire me in order to talk about it. Like I think that's the only way to deal with this type of information. Being silent and being kind of like in the shadows and stuff like that, I don't think that works. I don't think that
Well, you can
like going
potentially
along with
do
it.
both in terms of like maybe stick around for a bit, see all collect all the data in terms of all the bad, and then just be a whistleblower, right, and quit and resign, type of stuff.
I mean,
Or is in the title
I
like one hand on the steering wheel type of thing, but also with the transparency aspect.
I think that duplicitness could be taken and it could be construed in different ways. I think that like radical transparency is usually the way to go in the scenarios. Like that's how I would, as opposed to just like some huge data dump and stuff, because then you really don't have the ability and the expertise in order to shape that leak, to shape that information. Who are you in order to do that? I don't know. I don't like like Snowden and stuff like that. I don't really agree with like how he handled that scenario necessarily. So I do think like but I don't know. I think that the damage is already there, like, and the scientists, we're talking more about like a lack of people in these positions, more than like what are these people doing. But it is
Well, yeah, but you could
interesting
be
like
one less
what
person,
happens.
right? Yeah.
I do have my friend in this agency. I mean, there is standing orders that you are going to do work on projects that only the president of the United States agrees with.
Right.
Like you're not allowed to work on projects or push anything that the president doesn't agree with. That is like a standing thing. And that's not even, they don't even work for the federal government. That's a contract. They're contracted out. So like theoretically it's an independent organization. They could do whatever they want, but which is unfathomable to me. I would be very hard pressed to do that. So I don't know, man. That's
Yeah, no, like I can see either like speculating for myself as of now. I'll probably lean towards of like yeah, I lean, as each passing day goes by, I lean more towards of like maybe damage mitigation is not the best approach, and like people should, well, see the true damage that's being done when this these changes go unmitigated. Basically,
Because
the proverbial, people need to touch the fire and get burned before they actually modify their behavior.
because at some point you are signing off on it, like by saying that and agreeing to the reports that are being taken out, or like imagine working for or doing and touching the acetaminophen cases with autism, and now the he makes those baseless statements about vaccine causing autism. I mean, it would be it's awful. Like it would be that. I mean, what would you do? I mean, if you're already working on that, I don't know. Like, what do you say? I mean, he is being, taken to court about it. So it like the judicial branch aspect of it is kind of being pushed. But as a scientist, what do you say? Like, what would you do? Like, go out there if you're working for the NIH or something, like with those grants, or you're working as an advisor or something like that. Like, I don't know. I mean, he's making his own baseless statements, but he's representing the entire department.
Yeah, no, that's where it's like, well, if you're if you're in the position to undermine, or rather, it would be viewed as undermining. I would not view it as undermining. Of like, if someone speaks out saying, "Hey, what RFK is saying in regards to the link between Tylenol and autism, that's totally BS," and like the current evidence or data do not substantiate that. Like I personally would have no problem undermining that, but I also would recognize that I'm probably not going to be lasting long.
Yeah, exactly. Prime, any closing thoughts on the ideas of the HHS and RFK's leadership of it? We're gonna, before we go to the screw worm.
And well, do you have any thoughts on the approach of what I was bringing up in terms of like mitigation versus non-mitigation?
Exactly.
I think you're basically making a well, you're not really making the argument. I understand you're just like asking the question, but like that sounds like an accelerationist argument, which like I don't know, man. I've got like young family members, like little kids. It's easy to say, well, I mean, I wouldn't mind these numbers going up, with the assumption that, oh, it's not going to affect the people of my life, right? I'd be heartbroken if I found out that Dr. Greg's children, came down with this.
Fair.
And and for all the others, right? Like even, the children of anti-vaxxers, because they didn't choose their idiot parents. So like numbers going up in that way, like it's easy to have a level of emotional separation from these things, and like not realize there are people behind it. Yes, it would make a better political point for me if like there were 10 kids dead from this, right? Like, or the numbers even went higher. It's something I could use in political arguments. Great. Also, there's 10 kids dead. So I'm not for that. Especially not in this area. I mean, like in other places, maybe, I don't know. Like there might be a better argument to be made when like the connection between life and death isn't so immediate. Health and Human Services has a big important job to do, and like the next topic that we're going to approach is another example of this. Of what happens if you don't have competent government. The next topic isn't necessarily about life and death, like human life and death, but billions of dollars.
Not yet, and hopefully it stays that way. But like,
well, I mean, I don't think the screwworms can affect like humans directly, but like it's just that, or I mean, they can't be like not like in a lethal manner as far as we know. But like like the consequences are just stark when you don't have these things. So like in terms of like remediation, you're talking about saving kids' life. That's always going to be a good thing, you know.
Mhm.
Like just put it into that. But in terms of like hoping things fall apart. I mean, I don't. I mean, I guess I could have some examples
Well,
of
I wouldn't say I wouldn't
maybe
frame it as hope.
places.
At least I personally wouldn't frame it as hoping, but I take your point in terms of like,
More like
Yeah,
radical
yeah.
whistleblowing. Like, what Prime? What do you think? Like Snowden, and as a scientist, if you're working for here, like, what is your duty in order to, like expose as much data as you can, knowing that there probably isn't going to be much political impact, but then, like, what do you think your, like, morally or ethically, like, your duty is, as a
Well,
patriot?
I'll have to disagree with you in that. Like I thought Snowden, how he handled it was brilliant, and
Hmm.
shout out to Edward Snowden. I think. I mean, people still like don't. I think people have forgotten just like how much he exposed about what the American government is doing and its massive surveillance state. Gave us information that we didn't know before, and who knows if we would have ever found out like within our lifetimes, or it would have been one of those things 30 years down the line. You find out the government had been spying, had an immense spying program against the domestic audience. Like that was amazing. Shout out to him for doing that, and at great risk for himself. Um,
Hmm.
so like in terms of like whistleblowing, yeah, I'm absolutely for that. Um, and we should also understand that both Democrat and Republican governments absolutely hated. Obama was the most vicious to whistleblowers. Um, uh, he in the way he used the law against them and journalists, whistleblowers and journalists. No one had been more vicious to them. And I'm not sure if Trump has even surpassed his use of like this like Sedition Act and all that. Um, so it's bipartisan. That power doesn't like to be checked. Obama's famously said, sunshine's the best, like disinfectant. That was a lie, though. That was absolutely a lie. He didn't mean it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, like governments don't like it when their secrets are told and they're questioned. But shout outs to the people who do it. They're absolutely brave. They're heroes, and they should be treated as such.
All right, man. Awesome. Well, guys, I, I gotta tell you, the new TikTok dance just dropped. It's called the Screw Worm. It's
no.
wild. I think that's what everyone's talking about now. That's what everyone is. But it's wild to me, how often, and what stood me out to me about like these cases and what we're talking about is how many things in the early 2000s that we had eradicated, like from the United States. At least we had it wasn't there anymore. We
I'd
had no
honestly had
new
never heard
cases.
of this until recently, until these
Yeah.
articles started coming out.
Yeah, and it was interesting. The idea. I was actually, when I was interviewing for labs, trying to get back into academia. I actually interviewed with the lab that did the gene drive, the CRISPR gene drive in the mosquitoes. Corey, I don't know if you've heard about it, but
Hmm.
yeah, it was a really cool, like, breakthrough using CRISPR to basically, each of them would be getting half of a CRISPR. They would be released into the population as they bred. The resulting offspring would have the CRISPR activated. The offspring would die. Turns out they've just been sterilizing flies and releasing them into South America for a really long time. It's been remarkably successful, guys. And we are monitoring efforts in order to watch that happening, or the monitoring the advancements of screwworm from across Central America into the United States has been halted. And now Here we are. So the U.S. Department of Agriculture announced 3 new cases of New World screwworm, including the first cases in dogs and goats on Monday, bringing the nation's total count to 5. It also pledged to ramp up and expedite mitigation efforts for screwworm, a parasitic fly that the nation declared eradicated in the 1960s. At a news briefing on Monday, federal and Texas state officials said that they were using technology driven by artificial intelligence to monitor screwworm populations, training ranchers to recognize infections in their livestock, and expanding the numbers of facilities that produce and disperse sterile flies, which are the primary tool for managing screwworm. Guys, when they just say and throw in, we're using AI to manage.
Don't worry, AI's on the case.
They're just
sit back and
they're
relax.
just talking to ChatGPT, guys. They are not using language like neural networks, deep learning. It is literally like the worst case of using it. Like they're definitely just putting data into ChatGPT and be like, "What do you think?" You know, and or some intern is who's about to get doged, and now they are. I love that. I love that they're just throwing it. Guys, don't worry. Don't worry. We got it under control. We've got AI on it, and you're just like, I just can't. You just can't make it up, man. You just can't make it up. So, I mean, it's one of those things. You know, it's just yet another example of like these that parasites exist that. I just was reviewing a video last night. Like these people do not think that like parasites exist. The RFKs of the world, the terrain theory people of the world, they don't feel like parasites are actually real, that viruses exist, that these are just manifestations of microplastics or chemtrails or whatever it is. And now, but in reality, guys, they exist. We have to monitor them. It impacts us, and it's just how good science is at prediction, which is a predictive quality within science, and we have mitigation efforts because of that. And when we hinder that, we don't have those capabilities now, and we can't prevent that from happening. I mean, it really is that simple. And now look where we are. It takes so much more effort, and it's so much harder to, get the cat inside the bag. You know what I mean? You gotta prevent it from happening in the first place. And these are all lessons that were, rules that were written in blood. That how is since the 1960s, guys. Like, oh, come on.
Yeah, I'm curious because like they mentioned in the article, and you sort of like alluded to it, of like, well, so there's, I guess, multiple solutions, but now one of, I guess, the newer solutions, maybe not newer, but rather a newer approach to the same solution of like, one of the primary solutions is creating sterile flies, I think largely male flies, and then introducing them, or like pretty much flooding the zone with these male flies so that effectively they can't effectively reproduce. But then now we have the tools to do that through genetic modification. And I imagine that's probably like quite efficient. But then it's like, I'm curious if, I'm not actually all that curious, but I imagine like there's not going to be public backlash or resistance to using these genetically modified flies, right? Because like it's genetically modified, like are the ranchers or whatever, the farmers going to reject the use of these genetically modified flies because it's like, well, because they're genetically modified, even though this will probably be like one of the most effective, if not the most effective way to solve the problem? I imagine probably not, since like they recognize that this will be, well, they'll probably recognize that the technology is good and that's effective.
Exactly. The same people are telling us that DNA isn't the basis of heredity, and here we are using, we're using knockouts in order to, the knockout protein, like the knockout DNA is literally being inherited and causing these problems. The Novo fly contains genes for 2 unusual proteins. In males, these proteins have known effects aside from sterility, but they cause females to die at the embryonic stage. So the only Novo fly to reach adulthood, unless tetracycline, a antidote to the genetic modification, is administered, is a sterile male. It's never been tested in the field, and that has to be the next step. Sweet, guys.
But like, yeah, will there be resistance to testing in the field because like, oh, we can't introduce these genetically modified organisms? Like, again, there's a significant proportion of the population that's against genetically modified foods. So it's like,
Yeah.
I would have to imagine, or I would assume consistency would be at play. Not that I expect consistency, or I expect not. It's like these people will not be consistent. Like
It's interesting
if
you say that, because that the gene drive, the example that I was talking to you about, it did have hybridization with, there was some hybridization that did exist that
okay,
with that we saw, like, and so it's not like, it's not an un, it's not 100%. There's gonna be somehow, like, sometimes you're gonna have parts of these genetic components that just exist sometimes out in the wild, and like what those recombinations can be over time, like, we don't know. But, it can be
although this technology seems different from what I can tell,
yeah,
because like
yeah,
it
yeah.
sounds like
It's not a CRISPR based gene drive, but yeah.
yeah,
But I'm just saying that biological control agents, where you are introducing
I
an
agree. There's
organism in order to,
there's
yeah,
definitely
it's not as,
a potential
it's not
concern
as
there. I'm not
clean.
saying yeah,
Yeah. Novofly is considered a pesticide. It would typically be subject to lengthy approval process before being released into the environment. However, because of the public health and economic dangers associated with the screwworm outbreak, the EPA is considering an emergency use authorization, guys.
but why would we need any regulation, right? Isn't that the whole point of this administration? No regulation. That's let it rip, right?
I love the idea. I love the idea of like the Trump admin going like, after all that stuff with the EUA and the COVID vaccine, now all of a sudden they're using it again for MAHA and all these guys. Like,
Well, now that we have a
like,
real problem with the screwworm, better to accelerate the use of this
yeah, I mean,
technology.
kind of like going back to what Prime was talking about. It's like, well, I'm happy that they're using the emergency use authorization. This is exactly what it's for. It's more of the hypocrisy, right? It's more of like the fact that these people are just openly hypocrites, and but they are. And that is their superpower. That is the Republican superpower, that they can be hypocrites, and it's actually
True.
it's a strength for them, because they do it and it's right, and Democrats do it when it's wrong, and that's what it is, and that's what it always will be.
I mean, it's I can't concede it. It is an advantage to not be handcuffed by consistency, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What morals? What is that? I mean, like, Prime, do you think that, like, how, I mean, here it's just another example, right? Of the, you know, RFK comes in, all of a sudden he spends his entire adult life suing Monsanto against about glyphosate, and then as soon as he comes in, glyphosate ramps up production. There's the emergency use authorization for something that is less controlled than a vaccine, but here they are, like just using the powers of the of the government. I mean, do you think that, like, in terms of hypocrisy, do you think that is it like, can we learn something from this to actually just that maybe, like, all these the Southern Belle, like, oh my God, I can't believe that the Democrats would do this, or you know what I mean? Like, maybe we shouldn't be tied to this Republican media circus, right? That we, as people that want to make a better world, that we can just kind of move forward and not have to be dragged down into the pits of this Republican algorithm world.
I'm not sure there's much to be learned from Republican, like, hypocrisy. I mean, like, it's self-evident, it's known, right? Like, if you don't accept it, it's because you're part of the MAGA cult. Like, I mean, like, there's a billion examples. I mean, we've given them, and we'll give more in the future, right? But just like, how much more is there to learn? I mean, it could be useful for propaganda, I guess, but only, but not even that much though. Like, it's like, yeah, I mean, this government just doesn't care and doesn't follow the same rules. So I don't know how in the end like useful that is, right? Um, but like I think it's just you know, talking about like the screw worms. I just want to go back to what Corey said previously, which dovetails on what we had said in the previous section. Corey said that he had never heard of this beforehand. I hadn't either, right? And I imagine most of
Me
you
neither.
hadn't. And that was because government worked. Like government worked. It handled it. It was done, right? Like there was a division of I don't know how many people who had this job and like had funding to manage this, and it was handled. It was done well, right? Decades without a significant outbreak. That is an incredible government success. So successful that you never heard of it, right? Now
True.
now that it's been screwed up, now that ignoramuses have been put in charge, right? Know nothings. Um, we, the world, well, at least the United States, has become aware, right? The general population is learning these things called screw worms, huh? What is that, right? And yeah, like for those of us who are paying attention, are we are learning about like these great efforts that were undermined, right? And I'm not sure if this actually happened. I suspect it might have at some point in time, but I'm not sure. But like we've heard stories like this before, right? Where um, uh, Fox News, conservative media, gets a hold of some sort of the research study or government grant going towards some sort of like study of some obscure animal, right? Like, and what we're talking about here is like the mating habits of flies, right? Like,
Yeah,
look how much
exactly.
money, yeah, millions of dollars are going into like altering the mating habits of flies. Now, you can imagine that news section of Fox News being played continuously, right? Going through the Republican fever dream, and like, oh, but this is yet another example of government waste, right? Government waste.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there could be no reason to do that. One, like, let's pretend screwworms weren't some sort of pernicious uh, uh, organism, right? Like, let's just imagine they were an interesting fly or organism that was just like being studied, right? That could have incredible implications one way or the other, like whether we know or not, right? We don't know what'll be interesting until we actually take a look at it, right? So yeah, actually like gaining knowledge can be useful because that can come in maybe decades later, right? But
Mhm.
in a critical moment when she's already done the research and it's already out there, just putting that out, just making that clear. But in this case, no, it actually has direct practical implications. But if this was uh, like went through the conservative fever dream, right? The fever swamp of media, yeah, this would have been turned into their next boogeyman, right? Another example how government fails, and we just need a businessman to come in there and clean things up, obviously, right? Like, I mean, so like that's the thing that I'm more interested in examining, right? Because I think once again we have to like let people know like what does government do, right? Now I don't think you could have ever made the screwworm interesting, to be clear, honestly, until this happened, right? And people can understand like the direct link between that and like beef prices. I don't think like it would really take a disaster like that we're facing now to make it
Probably.
salient to people. There are plenty of examples, plenty of the programs, right,
Yeah.
that are easier to draw links to. And people just like we just need to be constantly be surfacing this, right? Like if the if Republicans can like do news conferences, right, and go on programs, or the conservative news outlets to talk about like how this program is failing or it's waste, whatever, right? Like we could actually just do the opposite, right? We could just like go on these programs. We mean Democrats, corporate Democrats, ugh. But at least
Your
maybe
favorite.
you know, but more lefty Democrats in which way. But like you could just go on and just make the opposite case, right? Like we could just like not even we could just talk about like, hey, like this is a set of programs that we've been looking at, right? And this is how they've been affecting you. And what I want to do is I want to increase this, right? You find success stories, things that are actually working, things that are you're making people's lives better, and that you can draw some sort of significant link towards, right? And we're like, this is incredible. In fact, we should be increasing this. Let's let educate the public as to what this is, what it does, how it works, and how it's related to you, and then say, hey. Actually, why don't we increase this? That's what I'm fighting for, rather than constantly being on the defensive, right? As Republicans try to cut things, and then Democrats just trying to maintain what they have or lessen the amount of damage you're going to do through the budget, right? Actually, make a proactive case. No, we're going to increase this because why? This helps you.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah,
totally agree.
I think that's a really good point. And also maybe just to like expand a little bit, where so multiple things. Well, one, going back to a point I've made before, it's like a lot of rhetoric gets thrown around in terms of like whatever third world countries, right? But then it's like, well, U.S. has a measles outbreak. You now have the screwworm, which I believe, according to the article, like that's the result of like pretty much like I think coming from Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, I think the case is mounting more and more that the United States is a third world country. But also, another case you made as to why the U.S. should care about what goes on in other countries. Of like, if this was the result of coming from Mexico, or like whatever migratory patterns were coming from Mexico, it's like, well, what if the United States implemented a similar program or had a well? I think the United States has a vested interest in eradicating the screwworm in Mexico, right?
Mm-hmm.
And why not either help them with their own program? Because it's like, well, as has been said many times before, viruses no borders, and parasitic infections no borders. And so it's like, yes, you can maybe close off your borders to people, but things like parasites, like in this case, and viruses, like a border or a wall, is not all that effective.
Yeah, Gavin Newsom tweeted out like, "Can we have this one back?" Like, and it was exactly what Prime was talking about, where it was some Fox News article being like, "They're trying to they're trying to breed flies in South America for tens of millions of dollars," and it's just like, well, yeah, it happened to be like these flies specifically for this reason. And Rand Paul and Ron Paul do the same thing every year. It's like their most hated, like freaking their most hated governmental scientific funded projects that they're joking about. But it's just that type of ideology doesn't build anything. Like they're not saying like it's better to build it to build it in this direction. They're just trying to burn down the house. Like at least science and this spending, like whether or not these things get approved, the money, the pool is given to the NSF, NIH, DOE, or whatever that agency is by Congress, and then those specific grants and those awards are given out by their peers democratically within their subgroups. So these professors go and they basically present to each one another like how these grants should be awarded, and they choose what is the best research and development grant. This stuff like is I don't think that this is necessarily like research and development wise, but like the one that they're talking about for the new flies, that would be in that pool that we'd had to have developed that for years in order to actually have that. But Prime, I wanted to give you a shot at this. There's a chat that said, "You guys are intoxicated with the two sides of the aisle. The most prosperous future is not on either." So I'm curious, like, what your thought is on that, Prime.
Not entirely sure what that means, personally.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, do you? I guess. I don't know. I guess like we are talking about in general the how Republicans are uniquely bad at doing this. Like and the Republicans being so anti-science and anti institutional knowledge is absolutely pushing us in the bad direction. So I think that is a very apparent. So like, I don't think I don't think that you could say otherwise. But yeah,
I mean, this has happened on this administration's like it's hard for me to imagine, although I guess nothing is possible. Like, can they blame the Biden administration for this? I don't think they can. I don't think there's any meaningful way that they have. So, but like, will this administration receive any sort of penalty, or like, is this going to result in any sort of meaningful loss? And obviously not. And at the end of the day, like, is this a major problem now? No, but I think it has the potential to like potentially spiral out of control. But either way, at least optically, it's not a good look to have something that has been considered eradicated for whatever 50, 60 years, and then now has returned. And now you have to actively monitor it and spend probably more resources than you need to hopefully get it eradicated again, or like truly under control. But then it's like, well, yeah, if this is on this administration's watch, that should be a bad look for them.
Yeah.
And they should pay political cost for that. Do I expect them to? No.
I mean, the people that I debate and the panels that I'm on, the Republicans say that this is just another like, it must be an election year. That's what they're thinking. Oh, more
like,
fear.
Well, I'm not an expert on U.S. politics, but is it like virtually like every year an election year, or virtually every other year?
It does seem like that. I mean, it's like because they're like, oh, it's wow, it was bird flu, now it's hantavirus, now then it was Ebola, now it's screwworm.
Yes, that's how nature works. Like, yes, there's yes.
Exactly. I mean, it's just it's wild to me that people are still coming to grasp with how the reality, like that we don't live in a hermetically sealed bubble. Like humans exist, and our health is tied with environmental health, guys. So when we don't monitor and we're not involved with coronavirus bat cave monitoring, it impacts our ability to have better vaccines and flu vaccines and things like that. Like
humans can ignore nature, but at some point nature will not ignore you. Like, you can't.
That's a good way to put it. Exactly.
Like, I mean, yeah, as you said, like, we have all of this technology. Not that we have perfected everything, and far from it. But like, obviously, technology is better than ever and advancing at pretty accelerated pace. And it's like, yeah, to impede that, or like to get in the way of implementing these technologies, or not using them to, let's say, monitor nature more and understand nature more, is just like, it's not going to work out. Well, we see it not work out in the long run. Like, nature is brutal. Like,
I guess, like, Prime, I'm curious about your thoughts on, like, I'm curious is the future like a technocratic solution where we can figure out, like, apolitically, not ideologically, how to like make these systems better, or for monitoring and science and funding and that kind of thing? Do we remove, like, kind of like separate out science spending and the CDC and the EPA and stuff, like not even tie it to congressional spending, like voting at all? So then the president and the Democrats and the Republicans can't even touch it? Or is it to like bring in a third party or way or group to that could usher in and then change the Democratic Party, because it seems like the Republican Party is lost at this point. So I guess, like, people that want to try to improve the world, do you think that we could kind of like the Fed, like, should we take out the science spending from the government entirely? But I'm just curious, like, what your thoughts are, Democrat versus Republican, on this kind of stuff.
I mean, Corey, you already noticed my answer. Absolutely everything's political. So it's foolish,
which I agree with.
It's foolish to ever think otherwise. Everything is political. Either it's settled politics or currently divisive politics. That's the only difference. But it's all political. Um, uh, Science spending is not a thing that um, has enough political support to be somehow sanctioned off in the government budget. Um, I wish it did, uh, and I guess automatic renewals for grant spending and the whatnot. That would be great, but like it doesn't have the political support to like for something like that. But I mean, I guess I wouldn't be opposed to it if that was the case. Even then, that would be political, and even then, it would need defenders.
Show me
Um, like you know, Social Security is sort of cordoned off in that way. But Social Security is constantly under attack, and it needs defenders. Um, so no, there is no path forward where, at least currently, there isn't a fight. Like the path forward, I think, is maybe like winning the conversation about science, like getting the public back on track with like science education and like an understanding of how important these things are. Um, and so like destroying this narrative, this anti-science narrative. I don't know how likely that is to happen anytime in the near term, and I feel like the only time the way that might happen would be through some sort of disaster that the public has to face. Um, well, the idiots in the within the public
Mhm.
have to face the obviousness of their foolish mistakes. Screwworm is not going to do it, right? Um, and this
I
measles
agree.
outbreak isn't going to do it. It's not deadly enough, right? If there was some sort of situation where like there was a stark difference between the survivability rates of people who did take a vaccine and those who didn't take a vaccine, and that like there was more bodies piling up in the streets, maybe that would do it. But short of something visual that these idiots can interact with, like a corpse, um, within their lives, I don't know what would necessarily do it for them. The best thing I think to do would be just educate people before they go into um, down that route, rather than having to change someone's mind, like actually educate people, actually uh, have a good science foundation, and equip them with the tools to think critically about the claims from charlatans like RFK Jr. That's probably the best route. Again, it's a long term route, and we have to wait for those voters, right, those young people, to grow up and then become active voters, for them to make a difference. But yeah, until then, there's no shortcuts, I think, in this fight. No easy way, no like fancy legislation that gets us out of the struggle against the simpletons.
Yeah.
And going back to I think what you mentioned earlier in terms of like uh, well, pretty much you mentioned like how let's say the Republican or right-leaning media apparatus, they'll run stories of like that makes certain scientific research look bad, even though there's probably like legit and valid scientific research actually being conducted. But then you were also making the case like, well, maybe corporate Democrats should respond to that or be making the case for these programs. In that vein, like basically, like yes, in some sense, whatever the White House or an administration has like has some semblance of PR. But do you think there's a case to be made of like an administration needs like a full dedicated PR team to make the case for all of these programs and to really make all of these things salient in the public, as opposed to like whatever. And I guess in this case, it's someone like Caroline Levitt for this administration, but that's just like one person as
Yeah,
opposed to like a
I
dedicated PR team.
yeah, I'd say so. And it's an interesting idea. To like have an office specifically dedicated to messaging on this issue, and
Science
educating the
communication
public.
office.
Yes, that's yeah, a science communication officer. Yeah, that might be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually like that idea, Corey. Not something I'd considered before, but like, yeah, I mean, this will be a Democratic administration exclusive office because the moment Republicans get in, they dismantle it. But that's fine. Actually, you don't need that'd be fine. But like, yeah, to during their time, like push his messaging, and maybe like organize like not just like from like the White House podium where like just like the political junkies like you and I, right, would see that messaging. Like we don't need to be turned, right? Like we would need more local and direct communication to reach the people wherever they are, and help with that, right? And then maybe like provide tools for schools, and programs, and more importantly, funding, if at all possible, to reach people. I think that would be pretty interesting. It's a good idea, Corey.
I
Yeah.
occasionally have those every once in a while.
You
But
get
like,
lucky.
yeah, a broken clock is right twice a day. And there's definitely a case you made that I am broken. But because like, yeah, in this article, and as we just highlighted multiple times, like I never heard of Screw 'em before, headlines like this. And like going through the article, there was a little bit of like history and like, yeah, making it known that it was considered eradicated, 50, 60 years ago. But like, yeah, and well, I'm Canadian, so I'm, just by proximity or distance. I don't know if screw 'em was ever a problem in Canada because we have, tend to have harsh winters, and that typically eradicates many things. But it seems like you Americans were also not aware of it, or maybe it wasn't. Maybe we're at one point, maybe we're younger, but like it was not salient in your mind. So then and I would say, generally speaking, you're probably overall pretty informed overall. So like I can only imagine if I'm extrapolating to the general public, they're largely, unless like, there's someone who was 60 or 70 years old, if you're of a younger age, like we are here, you're just not going to be aware of it. But then like, unless you read an article like this, you're not going to be aware of the history. You're not going to be aware of like how there was some sort of program that resulted in its eradication. And that's where I would hope, or like in my thinking is like, well, maybe some dedicated PR team that like makes the rounds in all of the media apparatus that makes all the points in this article, or even expands upon it. Like actually point to the program. What was the strategy? Here was the result, the eradication, and well, highlighting what went wrong in this case. Yeah, that was my.
And I mean, this only is going to get worse, guys. Parasites are living through the winters now. Like they aren't being, they aren't going away because of harsh winter conditions anymore. So that's why they continually go northern expansion, and we're seeing, and we're going to see more and more of this going forward. Like insects are going to be able to live longer, further. And as the winters become less harsh, and I think that genuinely this is and only one example, but I do feel like the future is not going to be with these type of mass meat programs that we have on a national level. Like I just don't think that these are there's too many external threats, and if you're a farmer, you're going to have climate change, you're going to have parasites, you're going to have, all these different things that are coming in that could impact your profit margins. So in the future, you're just going to have farmers say, I'm just going to make my meat cells inside of my bioreactor is going to be a fermentation tank, and my bioreactor is not going to be a cow. There is going to be some incentive shift happen away against living animals, and I really do feel like the United States, like a good way to prevent exposure to stuff like this and a change that's going to happen is going to have to be shifting our farmers insurance and that kind of thing, and start incentivizing like microbial protein production versus mammalian protein production. So I do feel like the future is in plants and lab grown like meat, basically.
I mean, I agree, but also, I'm also biased, but in a good way, since I'm largely vegan. But everything that you said, I agree with. but in my mind, it should it almost certainly has to be also coupled with like a cultural shift of like people actually accepting these lab grown meats or these genetically modified organisms or food coming from a bioreactor, right? Because like I think there's a significant proportion of the population that will not accept lab grown meat, unfortunately.
I think it's smaller than we think, and people, it's going to be so expensive. Like steak
Yeah,
and stuff is
I
going to
don't
be so
disagree in terms
expensive,
of
and
like
people are
once
gonna,
the economics
yeah,
works out, again, ideology goes out the window once once their pocketbook is affected, or they see that it's easier on their pocketbook or on their money. Um, but I'm sure
yeah,
there will still be some holdouts. But I'm curious, like,
yeah,
uh, does
for sure.
and I agree with everything that you said in terms of like how climate change will affect, let's say, migration patterns of parasites and microbes, all that stuff. Do you know if that's relevant in this case here? I think it was maybe touched upon in the article of like as a result of like I think the migratory patterns of the screwworm, but that like their migratory patterns I think get extended through climate change. But I could be making that up in my mind.
We
As a
could
result of
be
like
facing, is it a La Nina year or two on top of that? So you might just have like a double woozy happening there. Um, um, I
But
don't
either way,
know. I
whether it's
read two
relevant
of
is yeah,
these.
it is relevant overall. And I agree with
Yeah,
your assessment that
yeah. No, that's an interesting point. Um, yeah, I think it's only going to get worse. And F1 said it in chat. I totally agree. Climate change, the increase in threats, uh, increase in these threats because there's no more winter frost as a firewall. Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
F1. It's just the future is not going to be with um, animals, guys. There's just too much of
But
a
you can go
question mark.
vegan now, just FYI. You don't have to wait for these technological
True,
breakthroughs.
but I
You know?
do feel like making it at the I do feel like in order to make the biggest impact, we have to have systems in place that make it no change for the consumer, that makes it
No,
as
I agree.
effortless as possible. But I agree, like ethically and for sure. I mean, but we'll just have to see when that shift happens. Like for example, I know that shift is probably going to happen with like corn ethanol, and as we, I hope move away from internal combustion engines into EVs. We're going to have basically all these cornfields that are being grown for specifically that 10% requirement in our gasoline for corn ethanol. As that is not needed, there's going to be more farm space just in general in the United States that's going to be needed to be utilized for something. So I do feel like that is going to happen. That's if friggin' Becerra doesn't try to walk back California's friggin' EV mandate by 2050, which is just
Oh,
insane
really?
that he
That's
would.
being entertained as an idea. So
Yes, dude, I cannot
interesting.
believe him. He is like such an embarrassment, dude. I can't even believe it.
Uh, but
Anyway,
yeah, I agree with your assessment.
2035 actually, I think.
And
Go ahead.
and I've posed this hypothetical to people, especially in vegan debates that I have. But like, yeah, if or when, probably more when plant-based beef, okay, or whatever that looks like, but actual beef, as in like when it's side by side in the supermarket, and it tastes exactly the same, and it's the same price, it's like most people will choose the plant-based, as in like, but like as long as like taste is fully replicated, as in like you cannot determine the difference in taste, and the price is the same. Like most people seem to naturally gravitate towards the plant-based option.
For
But
sure.
then
Oh, question in. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say of like, but then what do we do? Because I have no doubt that there's gonna be whatever 1%, 5%, 10% of the population that like they will not make the switch. But at that point, but like I'm curious how you would view this person of like, do you would you judge this person as being less ethical or moral of like as in like this person making the calculation of like I need to buy this animal-based beef, knowing that it's slaughtered from an animal, as opposed to the plant-based option, even though I cannot tell the difference and it's the exact same price? Is that a morally
I feel like
reverse?
that's the more that ethically that's very because suffering is involved when there didn't need to be. So I think that ethically it definitely makes sense to go against the bioreactor animal. A question from chat: what is the ecological duty we have to livestock species post meat central diets? I mean, the domesticated livestock animals, there is no ecological purpose that they hold. They actually harm the environment specifically through methane production and stuff like that. So, I mean, I'm sure in this post world there would be maybe some hybrids that were made, but I don't know if they would be released in the wild
I
like
don't think it'll
wolves
be
in
that bad.
Yellowstone.
Like, this is not a big issue to solve. Like, I mean, taking it as our friend Corey according to Dr. Cook presented, right? In which, right, let's say bioreactors or whatever, maybe some other method, like get so good that we can have some sort of perfect, acceptable market replacement. I mean, like adoption won't be immediate, right? Like people have to learn about this, understand it, right? And then it's got to spread. We got to try it and all that, right? Adoption rates will ramp up, and as adoption rates ramp up, like prices will fall for regular meat, right? Except for those who are like ideologically committed to it. But like that'll fall, and then cattle herders will have less money. They'll Many of those will go out of business. There won't be people breeding these cows. These herds will like go down. Right, they'll be sold to other markets where like the adoption rates haven't risen so far. Right, let's say like this is at
Or
first
that's the
a
new domesticated pet for the luxury families
Yeah,
owning a
I,
cow.
sure,
I don't know
Or
about that
sure.
part, but yeah, so for well-off nations, maybe this some sort of technology like this will probably be the first place to spread. But in other nations like and lower income nations, it'll get to them last. So those cows will be shifted there. And so anyway, the point is that by the time we have some sort of a global post world um, shift, like those cow herds will have been like greatly diminished. So it won't be like that big of a thing.
Exactly, totally agree. Any closing thoughts, guys, on this or anything else that you wanted to just talk about?
No, I guess one last point that I'll add on, and actually was brought up in chat, is like, regardless of if or when the full plant-based substitute arrives to the market and there's widespread adoption, there will still probably be a place, or even like, well, actually going back to the hypothetical of like, how do we judge the person of like, this person is willing to pay a premium for the slaughtered cow option?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Should that be available at that point? Or like,
$1,000 a steak, literally.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to live in that world personally, but it would not surprise me if that's somewhere down the road.
I mean, like Elon Musk could spend $1 million a steak, so he could. He has all the money in the world that he could ever want. Well, thank you guys. Thank you. Go.
I want to
Prem, sorry.
tackle that for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should be able to. You absolutely 100% should. You should, like, if you're going to take on the expense, you should be able to get yourself a natural cow. There's gonna be like it's hard to imagine a world where there's literally no market for this like period, right? Like I could see this being a luxury for like the most like well off, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like in actuality, I don't know if we'll ever have something that is completely 1-to-1. Maybe it will, right? But even like in Star Trek, right, with the replicators, right? Like even those things didn't like fully like match like the real thing. Like they did a fantastic job, but
Okay.
like you not
Well,
even then.
okay. Yeah, but we're not comparing replicator or trying to develop replicator technology. Like,
Yeah, we're doing something worse. There's something worse.
well, no,
On
but
that,
that's not,
right?
that was like pure fantasy, as opposed to like we're taking meaningful steps to a bioreactor. Now,
Yeah,
it,
I didn't say that we weren't. I understand what the problem is, but like built into your hypothetical was that this would be like a one-to-one replacement, and it's probably not going to be the case. There'll probably be
Uh,
some difference, and it doesn't have to be a significant difference. It might be so little that in the end, people do make the moral choice or whatever, right? But
Mhm.
still, like one-to-one, maybe I could be wrong, but like
I see
all,
no reason why not only can it not be one to one, like as in like probably even like better taste and probably actually overall better quality control because you just have more control over a bioreactor. Like you can, I would say it's much easier to tweak the flavor of, in a bioreactor versus an entire cow and the meat that it produces. Just like we see it now with like, yeah, it's not a one to one, but all the food science that goes into developing like the perfect Dorito that you can't stop eating.
okay.
I don't.
Once the steak hits your mouth, it just dissolves. You're like yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. That's fine. I can work with this. Let's say yes. It's everything that Corey says, right? Okay. Everything that Corey says is the case. Still, people are going to want the real thing. There's going to be an interest, right? Even if it's just
Should that be
psychological.
an option though?
Uh,
Like,
yes.
you're
That's
saying,
what I was saying
okay,
before.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Absolutely.
So,
100%.
okay, well, then I'm gonna push back because like I think that then there's an ethical question. There's a more salient ethical question, as in, for example, uh, uh, this is not an
Frog
exactly
law.
one-to-one analogy, but like, okay, if or when, okay, we get to true autonomous driving cars, okay, and it's borne out in the data that truly autonomous self-driving cars are safer than human-driven cars. Should a human have the right to drive a car?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. I don't know that I would. That, I'm on the opposite
Yeah.
side of that.
I could be in favor of putting incentives so that people don't drive cars themselves. But
Mhm.
like one, even if it's safer, that should we give up a complete lack of control? Like are these things as safe in that like the actual like ability to get a human from point A to point B, right? Will be
In every
less
metric that we can currently measure, it is safer.
I'm with you. That they can go from one place to another, but like, are they secure? Like, are they capable of hacking? And what restrictions could the government put on the ability of these cars to travel from wherever? Right? Will some people want the ability to travel out, putting it within some sort of system that could be accessed by the government as to where they went, right? Like assuming they can disable anything that's getting off a signal as well. But
Mhm.
the point is that like yeah, people should be able to go to places anonymously if they want. So there are other factors beyond safety that should
I don't disagree.
absolutely be.
But like, if it's shown that like, again, this is like almost pure fantasy. But like, if we get to the world of like, we're now in the place that autonomous driving is like any sort of auto fatality is just like never happens.
Huh?
It's like it's more like down to zero. Uh, Even in that world, like that just that, yeah,
We should
that,
wildly incentivize people to not drive in that world.
Yeah.
I'm for all kinds of incentivizations. I want that world. I'd be one of the people who almost would never drive. I could see a situation where I might need to, um, and I should have that option without necessarily being punished for it, right? Maybe the punishments are extra harsh if I like get into an accident, or something, or especially if I, take a life, because it's just never extra level of negligence because there was a
Mhm.
safer option. So but I'd be willing to allow for this, right? I think and you incentivize most people. Most people will take that option, and most people will like there'll be a social stigma against driving at some point. That might take a while to happen, but like that'll all work itself out. But absolutely not having the ability to drive, even in an emergency, even if the car is somehow damaged, right? The auto pilot is damaged, and now well, no one's allowed. There's no steering wheel. I can't move this vehicle. But
Well,
there's an
I imagine
emergency.
like in this ultra future, like autonomous cars will not have steering wheels.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
think
that's what I'm
that's the
saying. That's what I'm
yeah.
saying. Like a place where it doesn't have steering wheels at all, and that means like, well, this is a hunk of junk when we need to move people for whatever reason. Like we can't use the autopilot, and now we're completely reliant on the computer. At that point, that seems like a bad idea for a number of reasons. Actually, yeah. The more I think about it, the more I think that would be a disaster.
Yeah, but so like expanding out of like the like let's say if we get to my world, probably there's probably going to be like no car manufacturer that's going to manufacture like a car with a steering wheel because like no one's gonna the market's gonna be so small. But then like
Mhm.
Oh,
should someone, if you have a response to that, go for it.
oh, I mean, but like if at that point, like if you're saying, well, no one has the ability to drive because like the government has mandated or somehow I don't know for whatever reason we no longer have like the physical hardware to do so, then I don't know the point is moot, right? Like,
No, no,
or
no,
we
that's
just
what
can't.
I wasn't done with my point of like
Okay.
should someone have the right to like as in like they have enough money and resources like to commission a custom car that now has a steering wheel that can self drive.
Old school.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, yeah, I guess. I mean, this seems like a very strange world, but like, um, uh, sure,
Okay.
yeah,
I mean, we
yeah,
do have
yes.
we have banned like frogwa, and other types of like protein
Mm-hmm.
production specific
Yeah.
ways like in our society, and I do feel like there's, um, I do
What's
think this
Farquhar?
is
That's where pretty much ducks are force fed, generally speaking, with a tube to pretty much create a high fat liver, if I remember correctly.
yeah
That's the organ.
yeah fatty liver.
Uh,
Yeah, and I do think this is one of my bold predictions that I think that's going to happen in our lifetimes. I do think that humans are going to be banned from driving on the freeways by insurance companies. Insurance companies are going to say, we can't afford, and you can, if you want to, as a human, drive on a freeway, but it's just going to be cost too much. It's $100,000 a month in order to do it. So it effectively like bans it to the point because they're not going to want
unless
to
they're ultra
go.
wealthy, but there's going to be wealthy people, right?
Yeah,
Right.
there's gonna. I think that you're just not going. They're not going to be able to do it. There's going to be lawsuits and stuff because like human drivers are so unpredictable, and there's going to be high speed, like too fast for human reaction speeds. Cars driving on the freeway autonomously, and they're going to say, "Hey, if you want to drive, you can drive. You can't drive on the freeways. You can drive on side streets to wherever you want, but freeways are going to be AI like driven like robots only." So
You're basically saying Minority Report. I hear you, but like I don't. I mean, look, I'm fine with that, But like the question was, should we not be able to drive at all? And
I think,
like,
yeah, I mean,
go on.
I think that you're gonna have basically like tracks and race car like kind of like things kind of like popping off because of that. I think you're gonna have a lot more people going to these places and kind of driving like people used to, and people would be like, okay, you can drive as fast as you want on the racetrack, but like here we're not going. And there's going to be a lot of more people like that are interested in like racing cars and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the ethical or moral compass will shift, as in like to your point, Greg, with the foie gras. It's like even people that eat meat, they generally like. There's a reason why this practice is largely or is a growing
Yeah.
banning across the world because it's like even though they're okay with the cows and the pigs, but like force feeding a duck under those conditions,
there's some line.
that's a step too far. And
Yeah.
I obviously I don't know for sure, and I guess maybe we'll find out. But like I foresee that it will get to the point of like if autonomous driving is so safe that like pretty much like no car fatalities happen, it's going to be viewed as unethical to be
Yeah.
a self driver, and people will just not tolerate it, and it will be in effect as in laws will probably be passed because it's so unethical to drive under those systems. Just
I agree.
as it's viewed as in our concept of animal welfare has evolved. That like yes, even meat eaters recognize that foie gras is probably not the greatest practice, and that like it should be outlawed. I think our moral compass is further and further shifting in that direction
Yeah,
with animal
I
welfare.
agree.
And so it's like that's where, at least the case that I'm making is like, if or when we get to the place of like plant-based or bioreactor meat can truly replace animal-based meat, I think the moral compass will shift that like, yes, this is now just so morally outrageous that you should not have the right to consume animal-based meat.
Yeah, like, I mean, there's going to be a black market for it, sure, but like you can't just like have an elephant steak,
Yeah,
like like because it's like an endangered or whatever. I mean, like, you're always going to have a black market because they'll be banned, but I don't think that it's going to be legal and permissible. But
yeah, that's my speculation.
Yeah.
And I would agree with that. As in that ethical framework, I don't personally think you should have the right to pay for whatever your $1,000 or $1 million steak just for the luxury of saying, I ate a slaughtered animal, even though it tastes the same.
Yeah,
That seems weird to me.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's gonna be to the point where it's good enough, and people are just like, what? Why are we allowing this anymore? So hopefully, maybe, or we just all go extinct because nobody cares about the environment and it all overpowers us, and we live in
True.
fallout like dugout holes in the ground. We'll see. Anything else that you guys wanted to add on this?
No, not on my end.
Okay. All right.
I'm at twitch.tv, youtube.com, /Prime Kai, PRIMECAYES. Love to have you. Thanks so much.
And you can find me on Twitch, CoreyCam84, Twitter, X, YouTube, Instagram, Substack, TikTok. It's Corey Campbell. And yeah, always a pleasure. Looking forward to next week.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you as always. Have a good one.
Take care. Be well.
Likewise.
Okay. Thank you, Balkle, for passing by. And thank you, anybody that I forgot. Overused Chew Toy, Apollo, Anarco Taco. Great to see your return. It's been actually, I think, at least 2 or 3 years. But yeah, thanks anybody for sticking around. And thanks for the great comments and questions. And yeah, that's it for today. Until next week, take care and be well.